This webinar was originally planned for GLOBIS MBA students. When the corona outbroke, our students asked for more learning opportunities. So today, I will not do a traditional MBA type of webinar. I plan to step out from traditional MBA, take a deep dive into Japanese art, and come back to management at the end. Sorry, I should have moved my slides. These are the topics that I intend to cover. We will be talking about shrines. We will be talking about Jomon era. This is Stone Age in Japan, and pottery. We will be talking about Japanese festivals, sumo wrestling, martial arts, the essence of Japanese arts, and finally, the implication for Western and Japanese management. My students have asked me, what are these? I hope you are seeing two pictures. One, the white one on the left and a red one on the right. People in Japan, I think you are familiar, but people overseas, do you know what they are? Some people say it's a gate. Yes, it's a gate. In Japanese, we call tori. Where does this gate lead you to? Yes, they lead you to shrines. And if you go through the gate, the main building would appear. The left one is Fujisan Higashiguchi Hongu Sengen Shrine. The right one is Kumano Hayatama Shrine. So both are shrines. Now, it is said that these buildings were established 1,500 years ago. But can we go beyond 1,500 years? Can you imagine what was at these places 3,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago? The shrine on the left has Fujisan, Mount Fuji, behind the shrine. Kumano Hayatama Shrine on the right has a large rock behind the building. So 3,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago, our ancestors worshipped these places because there was Mount Fuji, because there was a giant rock. And in Japan, I will talk about Jomon people today, but our ancestors worshipped nature, the mountains, the rock, the sun, the wind, the rivers, the tree, and nature's will to grow as gods. We call it kamisama in Japan. Now, have you ever seen the photo of these potteries before? These are Jomon potteries. They were built a long time ago. Let me just give you a little bit of explanation of Jomon. Jomon period is 14,000 years, 1,000 years before Christ. This is a time in Japanese prehistory where people did a hunter-gatherer culture, but they reached a considerable degree of sedentism and cultural complexity. Jomon means code-marked, and this was named by American zoologist Edward Mose, who discovered the shards of pottery. Jomon in world history is in the Middle to Late Stone Age. Now, let me go back to one of the pottery. The pottery on the right. Why is there so much decoration? What do you think? Because the pottery were used for storage and cooking. Why would our ancestor put so much decoration? My interpretation is that, our ancestors were artists themselves. So it was not just, functional beauty, but it was more of artistic beauty as well. This is the kind of house that Jomon people lived. I'm talking about 16,000 years ago to 3,000 years ago. And on the right, you will see a calendar of Jomon people. So depending on the season, they fished, they looked for crabs, they looked at wild vegetables, and they hunted animals. So this was like a typical life in the Jomon period. Now, I would come back to modern Japan. These pictures are scenes from Nara Park. Has anyone been to a Nara Park before? There are many deers, and deers are not afraid of human. Now, my question is why? I don't think you see many places where deer and humans live together. Deers and humans coexist at Nara Park. Deers, being an animal, they have not changed their behavior. So it is humans who have accepted to live with the deer, together with deer. Now, if I go back to our ancestors, Jomon people, they regarded their surrounding as hara, this is nature, and they took good care of the surrounding because hara, the nature, was the source of their food and energy. Japan is unique in that natural forest remains around shrines and temples, even in the middle of the city, like Tokyo and Kyoto. And I think this is another tradition of coexistence seen in Japan. Now, I'd like to introduce a Japanese anime that reflect coexistence. Maybe you have seen these movies, Princess Mononoke and Nausicaa. These are movies made by Mr. Hayao Miyazaki, who is from the Studio Ghibli. And what he emphasized in these movies are the importance of coexistence between human and nature. We human have to use nature in order to live. We need food, we need material, we need wood, we need energy. But on the other hand, nature needs balance. If we cut down too much trees, nature cannot sustain itself. And this is a big question, I think, posed to us today. I will move into festivals. Festivals played an important part in Jomon's life. People held them to express gratitude to the surroundings, nature and kami, gods, as well as to create a rhythm in their daily life. Gods in Japan are not like the only god in some religion. We say there is 8 million gods in Japan, so it can be anything. It can be the rock, it can be the water, it can be the tree, it can be the flower. When I say god or kami, please regard it as a Japanese kind of god. Thank you. These are places where our ancestors held festivals. The picture on the left is a Tabata stone circle, about a 1 hour west of Tokyo. The oval of the stone circle heads directly to Mount Fuji, and the sun ray on the winter solstice falls on Hirugadake, which is the highest peak nearby. So Jomon people had a keen sense to select a very special place to hold the festivals. The picture on the right is a map of Japan. And from east to west, I just like to point out some important places, not only for Jomon people, but for Japanese people today. the Kashima Shrine, Tokyo, Mount Fuji, Ise, Mount Tsurugi, and Takachiho Shrine, they all fall under one straight line. This line is a sunrise on a summer solstice. So what I like to say is our ancestor Jomon people were very sophisticated people who understood nature as well as astronomy. Now, let me move into festivals. I have put 3 pictures of festivals. The top one is a tree festival at Suwa Taisha. They cut the tree from the forest. They move the tree from the forest into the shrine over the river, and they would make the tree stand. So this is a festival held every 7 years, and there are so many visitors coming to Suwa, Nagano. The right festival is about our festival, our dancing in the Obon period of Tokushima, and it is known for a beautiful dancing. The picture on the bottom, it's a portable shrine held by men to kind of move the gods from the mountain to the rice field, or from the rice field to the ocean. My question to you is, why do people get so excited at festivals? Or why do visitors go see major festivals like the Suwa festival or the Obon festival? And what element of human are stimulated through festivals? I like to talk about Chinese character. I'm sorry for those who are not familiar with Chinese character, but this is a festival in Chinese character. And I like to explain what it means in Chinese character. Some character is made of combination of smaller parts, and the festival is made from 3 parts. The parts on the left is offering to the gods. The right represents people, and the center part on the bottom stands for altar or shrine. So the meaning of festival in Chinese character is people bring offering to gods in front of the altar or shrine. So thank you for those who answered, what fascinates people in festival. But I think the answer is in this Chinese character. Now, let me ask a question to you. How you view human beings? And I have made 3 triangles. From the left, are we a material existence? Or the model in the middle, we are a material existence, but also a mindful existence. The third model is we are material, mindful, but also a spiritual existence. Festivals were created as a special occasion. And in Japan, we typically invite gods, Kami-sama, praise them through Shinto prayers, offer dance, music, sake, Japanese alcohol, and food to them. People were rejuvenated not only because they worked together to hold the festival, but because of their time spent praying, serving, and feeling spiritually connected to the gods. Thus, festivals were people's occasion to refuel the emotional and spiritual energy people would also recognize and appreciate their connectedness with ancestors and elderly people in the community. So if we can touch some kind of spirituality, we are able to jump time and space. And that is what we do in these festivals. I have been talking about Japan, but if we look globally, pilgrimage is very popular today. This is an example of pilgrims in the Camino de Santiago, people walking from France all the way to northwest Spain. People would walk 800 kilometers over 40 days. But the reason people walk is to feel or connect with their soul and spirit. That's what most people who walked 800 kilometers will say. I'd like to move into sumo wrestling. Maybe you have seen it on TV. Maybe you have seen it in the Kuramae Stadium. But did you know sumo wrestling was also an act to please the gods at the shrines? And the reason why I'm telling this is if you go to traditional shrines, there are many sumo rings in the shrines. For example, Suwa Taisha that I mentioned, where we cut down the trees, move it, and replant it. They have a beautiful sumo wrestling ring in Suwa Taisha. And in some region, a sumo wrestler would take sumo only by himself. And what he is doing is he is playing a sumo match with the gods. The rule is this sumo wrestler must lose, or at least tie. The reason is he is to please the god for a good agriculture harvest on that year. Now, allow me to share my experience in Aikido. Aikido is a martial art that I have been practicing 35 years. And I'll try to touch the essence of Japanese art. There is some slides, but let me share my experience with my master. When you start practicing, initially we focus on the form or mechanics. That is how to move your right hand, how to move your left hand, how to move your right arm. You might not be able to see my right foot, or how to move your left foot. So basically, we are trying to understand the technique. If you can start throwing people, Aikido is like judo, so we throw people. Your master will ask you, what are you thinking? Obviously, you are thinking to throw your opponent, but that's not a sufficient answer. And eventually, the kind of practice I went through is I am trying to throw 4 opponents at the same time. So I have 4 opponents attacking you at simultaneously. Now, what is unique about martial art is you cannot beat your master, although you have more power or you have more strength. I was a captain of Aikido club when I was in university, so I'm in my 20s, practicing maybe 6 times a day. But I get easily thrown by a 70-year-old or 80-year-old master. I don't think this would happen in sports like boxing or wrestling. So I'd like to share with you what is behind some of the Japanese art. This is a framework that we learn in Japanese art. From left to right, it goes shu, ha, ri, And the focus is initially the form or the mechanics. In the shu stage, in the ha stage, it goes to the mind. And the ri stage, it goes to soul and spirit. In martial arts, you are typically white belt. When you are in the shu stage, you become a black belt when you get to a ha stage, and you become a master if you can feel or understand the soul and spirit. Let me kind of move on. Now, let me ask you a question that my master asked me many times. What is the best or the strongest mode in martial arts? Can you be strongest when you are in a fighting mode with, a full adrenaline, or are you strong where you are in a neutral mode without any strong emotion? Or are you strong when you are thankful to the opponent? The answer is the third mode, the gratitude mode. So my question is, why are we stronger when we show gratitude to our opponent? I talked about human views before, but if we combine the two framework, shu, ha, ri on the bottom, when you reach the master stage, typically you have a very holistic view about humans. And as a consequence, you can connect with a larger people, larger ancestor, and you become stronger. Now, we talked about Japanese art, we talked about sumo, we talked about aikido. Now, what is this implication for business? If you understand spirituality, if you have a feeling of soul, what can it do for business? Let me first start from a Western view. I'm not sure if you have heard Professor Peter Senge at MIT, but he has been leading Society for Organizational Learning. And these are some of the famous books from his lab. The Fifth Discipline from Peter Senge, Presence from Peter Senge, and co-authored by many people at the MIT. Synchronicity, this is Joseph Jaworski's leadership journey that he shared with everyone. And Theory U is a new theory to bring social change. Today I'm going to touch on Theory U. I think you see a big U shape on the right. Professor Sharma defines that when we bring social change, there are 7 stages. From the left top, downloading, seeing, sensing, presencing at the bottom, crystallizing, prototyping, and performing at the right end. If you can look at the left diagram, the yellow circle shows your focus. The black circle shows your boundary. So when we are in downloading, basically you are thinking about yourself, and you have a firm boundary between yourself and other people. When we go to seeing, our focus is close to someone else, maybe customer. If we go to sensing, we are with the customer. So your focus is out from yourself. And when we are in presencing, we are thinking of every measure to help maybe a customer. This is very similar to the Aikido practice that I did, taking on 4 opponents at the same time. Now, let me give you an example, just to make it easy. I will bring a Western car company and Toyota Motor into the picture. I have had the opportunity to work with Toyota for quite a long time in their global executive training. Let's say there was a customer complaint about a car. A typical Western company would receive a phone call, hear a customer complaint, and they would try to deal the case according to the manual. And according to the manual, there are things that they can do and they cannot do, and they would reply based on the manual. At Toyota, what is emphasized is to go to the customer site. So if the car broke down, the dealers would typically go see the car and try to fix it. And by doing that, what Toyota is asking its employees to do is to use their body, use their feet, and use their mind. In a Western car company, typically a customer complaint is data. So there is not much emotion into that complaint. But if you ask your employees to go to the site, which we call Genchi Genbutsu, because you are facing your customer face to face, typically emotions will be drawn to the customer. And in that way, Toyota's response to a customer complaint is very customer-centric. Now, I'd like to introduce another theory. This is from Professor Nonaka and Professor Takeuchi. This is called the Knowledge Creating Company. They have studied how knowledge is created from an individual person to a team and eventually to an organization. What they are saying is basically it starts from a tacit knowledge. Tacit knowledge is a knowledge that is in someone's hands or in someone's mind. For example, if a factory worker were attaching a door, let's say to a car, tacit knowledge is without measuring, they understand that the door is the right, fit to the machine or to the body. Explicit knowledge, on the contrary, is a numerical data or a verbal logic that can be shared explicitly. So if I were to use the example of a door, it's measuring the size, it's measuring the weight, and seeing the fit because of specifications. Professors Nonaka and Takeuchi said that knowledge can only be deepened if there is an interaction between tacit knowledge and explicit knowledge. So basically they are saying with body and mind and head, there should be an interaction going back and forth. And this interaction is brought by people or teams or an organization. So they are also kind of emphasizing the importance of face-to-face kind of gathering. Now, the last management theory I'd like to introduce is about 300-year-old companies in Japan. GLOBIS Professor Takubo and MBA alumni have researched 69 Japanese sustainable companies. They defined Japanese sustainable companies, JSC, as companies that have 300 years old of history and they have sales of 5 billion yen today. 5 billion yen is roughly 50 million US dollars. What they found is that JSC have made significant contribution to their local communities. Based on this, they proposed CCVM, a community coexistence value model. Michael Porter of Harvard Business School have proposed creating shared value, CSV. But when I compare the two, CCVM is much more, committed, much more long-term view than creating shared value of Michael Porter. They have also found that these companies have Shinto altars within their properties, and they participate heavily in local festivals. So I talked about the 3 views on human, but I hope that you come to see that Japanese art and also these management theory are trying to move from the left model to the right model, whether it's Toyota's business practice, or whether it's Theory U, or whether it's knowledge creating company or longevity companies in Japan. Now at GLOBIS, we try to touch the essence of Japanese art. I don't have a class on Japanese art in the MBA, but we try to touch Theory U. When your body and mind aligns with a calling, that is a path that you should choose as your kokorozashi. I think George was mentioning about kokorozashi in the beginning. We try to ask our students to seize these opportunities. So this is my last slide. Japanese art is influenced by the Jomon period, during which our ancestors found a way to coexist with nature. Japanese festivals give participants unity among themselves and with the gods, kamisama. This is why festivals are so enthusiastically received and passed on through tradition. Japanese art stressed the importance of moving from form, body, mind, to soul and spirit. We call this from shu to ha and to ri. Japanese management observes this notion of form, body, mind, soul, and spirit. I hope that knowledge creating company, study of 300-year-old company, you are aware that they touch on the body, mind, and soul and spirit. What I feel is leading Western management theory is also starting to touch on these elements. Today, because we live in a COVID-19 situation, it asks for social distance, but I hope we do not forget the power and energy of body, mind, and soul and spirit. So with that, I'd like to end my part, and I will be happy to take questions. Thank you very much for listening, and let me bring my colleague Zach back on the stage. I don't know, Zach, you work with me. I don't know if you kind of feel it, but I'm trying to look at everyone in a holistic view, not just who they are in terms of things like nationality and gender. In my view, these are form, and so basically, I try to understand my staff's mind. If they show signs of soul and spirit, I would like to, have them release that part to do something unique. So these are something I'm trying to do in an international context. I don't know how successful I am. Yeah, we have about 50 people doing the global business at GLOBIS. And I would say maybe 30 of them are international staff. So we have more international employees than Japanese. As a consequence, our communication is kind of mixed between English and Japanese. But I think how to say, the perception is very wide compared to working only with Japanese. So um, I don't know how successful I was today, but basically we need to set the setting, we need to show a framework, we need to define what is success in order, I think, to bring results in the international team. Um, I think young generation are more into maybe their iPhones, but if they take part in festivals, I think they would understand the power, not only about people being together, but also the special occasion to kind of feel the unity with gods or ancestors. So there are festivals that are able to bring in young people, and I hope young people can uh, understand and the essence of Japanese art. Um, that's my feeling. But I think when I talk to my Western friends or Chinese or Indian friends, what they tell me is, Nakamura, at least you have 1% of people still understanding the essence of Japanese art. This is much more than our society. So I agree with you that younger generation may not understand fully, but if we have 1%, I think it's much more than many societies. So how to spread from the 1%, I think is a challenge. And Koide-san, I think you can also help us spread this
Yes.
part.
Yes, I try that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Daphne, for your question. I think sales and marketing is a very, how to say, in a unique position, because you need to understand your customers, and in order to understand your customers, as I showed in theory you need to be, physically maybe you are not with them, but your mind should be with the customer. So in theory at least we should be at the sensing stage. So in that regard, whether it's Japanese or whether it's Western, I think we need to break our boundaries, and we need to think as a customer. So in that regard, I think sales and marketing are special. It's much more harder for internal division to do theory U, or to have a holistic view. So I think sales, marketing, or product development, R&D, these are very good divisions where you can use theory U or the essence of Japanese art. Um, thank you, Roland-san, to join in lunchtime. I still practice Aikido. So I practice, I plan to practice every other week. In reality, maybe I can only go once a month, but I do still practice. I also go to the mountains quite a lot, visiting, Jomon sacred places. So that's how I try to recharge energy. But as we get older, I think the time of concentration gets shorter. So we should also consider our age as well. I'm not working as hard as when I was in my 30s. Thank you, Rex, for your question. I am seeing your what you wrote on the chat. What you wrote on the chat, I think is basically true. Toyota's management is known to be hands-on, and hands-on means going to the field to understand the root cause of the problem. Now, COVID-19 has brought many new problems to Japanese company. I think not only Japanese company but companies worldwide. We were not able to go outside. some countries, I think there was a lockdown. In Japan, it was a request to stay at home. So basically, we were asked to run the business mostly from home or with a few members. So this case, no matter whether it's Japanese or Filipino or Western, I think there was no choice but to cope with the situation. I am seeing more digital transformation than maybe the past 3 years during these 3 months. So I have not had the chance to visit Toyota because of this situation, but I am hearing that they have made big strides in terms of conducting many services online rather than face to face. So in that regard, I think this time it was inevitable, whether it's a Japanese company or a Western company, to cope with the situation. Thank you, Lucinda. This is a deep question. It is said that Japanese have two faces. Omote is a face that we show to, especially to our bosses. Ura is a face that you show to your friends. In my generation, Omote played a big part, meaning the boss had a strong power. But today, because of knowledge, because of data, because of rapid changes, I think the ura means a true or a candid communication is more important. So I am seeing more changes in Japanese style communication, moving from omote, a good communication, to a direct, more candid ura type of communication. So and young generation, I feel they don't bother to say good things to their boss. So I'm thinking more candid communication will take place in the future. So and I think it's a good change. Thank you, Sato-san. It's good to see you. Yeah. Basically, you're asking how do we do shuhari in today's environment? I agree with you. It's not easy to meet people. I have not had the chance to practice Aikido for the last 3 months because of COVID-19. But there are things that we can do. For example, today's presentation are based on some of the readings I did during the 3 months. So I have tried to connect Japanese festivals and with the essence of Japanese art and a little bit of management today. So in your case, I think you should follow your interest, and maybe we cannot do a lot of ha and ri. I think we can do shu. We can learn the form or we can learn the technique. So I would use this chance or time that we have received because of COVID-19 and maybe do some studying so that when we are allowed to go out, meet people, you can do the ha part or the ri part. Thank you, Alba, for your questions. Let me try to answer using theory U. The traditional hierarchic management is only downloading. So your bosses or directors will not understand what is happening in the field. So I think many, or I would say most Japanese organizations have to move from downloading to seeing and sensing. Presencing is not so easy, so I will not talk so much on presencing, but at least if you stay and listen only to good stories or omote, companies cannot survive. So we need to go to our client site. We need to think and act like our customers. So in that regard, maybe theory U is something that is understandable to everyone. So if I were you, I would do a session, every member reading a theory U book and bring some examples of change in your organization. In that way, I think you can stimulate your organization to maybe move faster or comply with the changes in society. So those are some of the things that I would recommend to you. Thank you. I had a chance to meet Professor Senge and Otto Sharma in Vermont in 2018. And basically, um, Professor Senge's master is a Chinese Zen master. So he has learned from the East. And what they have thought back in the 1990s were MIT is known for system thinking or for using IT. And the how to say, what Professor Senge and Professor Sharma were thinking back then was if we continue on the path of Western capitalism, the ecological problems would be too big to handle. And that's why they have moved more towards Eastern philosophy or Eastern thoughts. And now they are leading this in a Western context. So a lot of sustainable movement in the, let's say, food industry in Europe has come from Professor Senge or Professor Otsuyama's initiative. So I think no matter whether it's from the West or East, this kind of idea of coexistence with nature is important on either side of the world. Uh, um, I'm on one of the government task force, but I am talking with them online right now. Basically, if it's a government task force, in the past it was we were asked to go into the ministry. So I think the COVID-19 situation forces many organizations to change or to cope with the safety standards. So I would say negotiation have changed because of the situation. What is possible in this situation is probably what we need to do. Now, even we are doing a task force online. Is there anything that we can do, or for the government or for the industry? Those are something that me and my staff are thinking, taking part in the task force. So I think it's inevitable that many discussions have gone online. But what we need to think is how do we make contribution? If you can use, let's say, the theory U framework, can we think from sensing? For example, in my case, if I worked at this ministry, what would I want to do for the industry? And because I'm in academia, I'm trying to think what can Globis do for Japan or for the industry. So I think the format of negotiation changed, but the way to contribute, I think, still remains the same. First of all, we don't teach these elements so much in school anymore. I did not learn, the heart of Japanese art from my parents. I learned through my master in Aikido. So I think the best way is to practice some kind of Japanese art. And when you practice Japanese art, there's a lot of doing rather than thinking. By using your body and mind, you understand the philosophy. So it's not a quick way, but once you understand, it's very deep and it energizes you. So, Erickson, if you like flowers, flowers could be a way. If you like to write, calligraphy could be a way. If you like to move your body, maybe martial art would be a good way. I am surprised. I go to the Aikido headquarters from time to time, but today there are many American people, there are many French people who are much better than me, and I am surprised to see the internationalization of these arts. So if you liked, some parts of my presentation today, I would recommend you to check. It doesn't have to be Japanese. It could be Indian. It could be Chinese. It could be American as well. But something deep that I think that resonates not only with form, but something with your mind and soul and spirit. The pilgrims, that can also be one, I think. Thank you. We have case studies, for example, of Toyota. We have case study of Inafood, or Panasonic. So through the successful Japanese companies, we touch these elements. However, things like Theory U, this is, I would say, maybe beyond MBA level. So it is more used in executive education. Some of what I introduced today maybe used more in art school or through traditional, Japanese art. So yes, we touch these elements, but maybe not to the full extent. So if you want to do more, maybe after an MBA, go to executive education or experience these arts. I think in that way, you could fully master them. Thank you. I am a Japanese, but my friends globally have also, we had this kind of discussion about what art can do. And I believe there's a big part that art can play to energize people, rejuvenate some spirit. So no matter where you are joining from, I hope we can spread the importance of art or body, mind, soul, and spirit. And I very much look forward to seeing you again at Globis, whether it's virtual or face to face. Thank you very much for joining tonight.